Welcome to tonight's tale.
We find ourselves in London, in the comfortable sitting room of Hercule Poirot, where the autumn rain streaks against the windows and the fire crackles with false comfort. For on this grey October evening, desperation will knock upon his door. Join us for Death's Double Cross, a tale of partnership and poison, of trust betrayed and secrets buried deep. Crafted in
Symmetrical,
homage to the masterful
yes,
Agatha Christie, whose
but
genius
not
we honor,
precisely
though this mystery
symmetrical.
unfolds on our own terms. Before we begin, tell us in the comments.
Really, Poirot, they
where
were
are you joining
perfectly
us from
symmetrical
tonight?
before.
Your presence illuminates our journey through these
There.
shadowed corridors of deceit. Now, let the story unfold.
Now there
The
is
rain had
harmony.
been falling since morning, a persistent grey curtain that transformed London into a watercolour of muted shadows and glistening streets. Captain Arthur Hastings, sat opposite
visitor.
my dear friend Hercule Poirot,
And one
his
in some
immaculate sitting
distress,
room,
I think.
watching him arrange, for the third time, the ornaments upon his mantelpiece.
Miss Blackwood to see
Really,
you,
Poirot,
sir.
I said,
She
setting down my
insists
newspaper.
the matter is
They
most
were perfectly
urgent.
symmetrical before. Symmetrical, yes, Poirot replied, stepping back to examine his work
Blackwood.
with narrowed eyes.
Show her in,
But
George.
not precisely symmetrical. The left candlestick, it was perhaps 1 centimeter, Hastings, closer to the clock than its partner. Such disorder, it
Monsieur
offends the little
Poirot.
grey cells. I suppressed a
I
smile.
didn't know where else to go.
After all these years, Poirot's fastidious nature still amused me.
Please,
though I had
mademoiselle,
long since
sit.
learned not to disturb his arrangements.
George,
His
some
egg-shaped
tea
head
for our
tilted as
guest.
he made one final adjustment, his waxed moustache gleaming with evident satisfaction. There, he declared. Now there is harmony. The doorbell rang,
My father.
sharp and insistent, cutting through the peaceful
Marcus
atmosphere like
Blackwood.
a knife through silk.
He died
Poirot's
3
eyebrows
days ago.
rose. A visitor, and one in some distress, I think. The bell.
What
it was
leads
pressed
you
with
to such a
urgency, no?
conclusion, mademoiselle?
Before I could respond, his valet George appeared in the doorway. Miss Blackwood to see you, sir. She insists the matter is most urgent.
He burned a
Blackwood,
letter that morning.
Poirot murmured,
He said
his green
so.
eyes gleaming with sudden interest.
It has
Show her
come
in,
to
George.
this.
The young woman who entered was perhaps 25, dressed in a
Your
traveling suit
stepmother.
of deep burgundy
She
that,
is?
despite its quality, showed signs of hasty assembly.
Vivian
a button
Blackwood.
incorrectly fastened,
She
a
is
strand of dark
32.
hair escaping from beneath her hat.
My
Her
father
face was pale,
58.
her eyes red-rimmed, and her gloved hands twisted together in a
The
gesture
symptoms of
acute
heart
anxiety.
failure can appear
"Dis donc, Monsieur
suddenly.
Poirot," she began, her voice trembling. "Thank God you're here. I came
Mr.
straight from
Hartley
the
said
station.
something
I
about
didn't know where else to
not
go."
being cheated out of what's
"Please,
rightfully
mademoiselle, sit."
mine.
Poirot gestured to the chair beside the fire. "Georges, some tea for our guest. She is chilled, and she has travelled far."
You have been
young
to the
woman
police,
sank into the
mademoiselle.
chair as though her legs could no longer support her.
He said
I
my
noticed that
feminine
despite her obvious
sensibilities were
distress,
manufacturing
there was a determined
suspicions.
set to her jaw, a firmness in her gaze that spoke of
Mademoiselle,
inner strength.
I accept your case,
"I am Miss
but
Emily
I
Blackwood,"
seek the truth,
she said,
however
accepting the tea
uncomfortable.
George brought with trembling hands. "My
I want
father is..."
justice for my
was-
father,
She stopped, pressing her lips
whatever
together.
the cost.
"Your father?" Poirot
Hastings,
prompted gently.
the little grey cells
Marcus
will have
Blackwood,
much to consider.
Of Blackwood and Hartley Imports. She drew a shaky breath. "He died 3 days ago. They say it was his heart. But I know, it was murder." Poirot's expression did not change, but
What
I
do you
saw
make
his
of it,
fingers tap
Poirot?
thoughtfully against the
The
arm of his
wife?
chair.
The partner?
"This is a serious accusation, mademoiselle. What leads you
The
to such a
letter.
conclusion?"
The will. The
Eleanor
argument.
Blackwood set down
These
her
are
teacup
facts,
with a clatter.
yes.
"My
But
father was in
facts
perfect
can be
health.
misleading.
He walked 3 miles every morning, never touched alcohol, ate sparingly. His doctor had examined him not 2 weeks before and pronounced him fit as a man half his age." Her voice cracked.
Thornfield
suddenly,
Hall
that day,
emerged like a
simply
spectre.
collapsed, dead before the doctor could reach him.
But in
The
need of
symptoms
attention.
heart failure, they can appear suddenly, I offered, though even as I spoke, I saw Poirot's slight head shake. "Perhaps, Captain Hastings," Miss Blackwood said, turning to me with fierce eyes. "Chiddy, but my father received
The
a letter
shutters,
that morning.
they do not
I
match.
saw his face when he read it, white as chalk. He burned it immediately, but I heard him say to himself, 'So, it has come to this.'
Thank you for coming.
Those were his exact
The
words.
funeral is at 2.
"A threatening letter?" Poirot asked. "I believe so, and there is more." She leaned forward.
I should
her
like to
voice
see the
dropping.
room where your father
For the
died.
past month, my father had been different, distracted. I caught him
Everything
several
has
times
been
staring
left
at nothing,
as it was.
his brow furrowed. He cancelled 2 business trips. He changed his will. Changed it how? I don't know the details. He met with his solicitor, Mr. Pemberton, privately, but I overheard him tell my stepmother that provisions had been made. She was furious. Poirot stroked his moustache. Your stepmother. She is...
This brandy?
Vivian Blackwood.
It has been here
My
since
father
that
married her
night?
3 years ago, after my mother's death.
That one.
Eleanor's tone
The others
cooled
haven't been
noticeably.
touched.
She is 32 years old. My father was 58.
Now I should
The
like to
business
meet the
partner.
household.
This Mr. Hartley? Gerald Hartley. He and my father founded the import company 20 years ago.
My stepdaughter
But
seems
lately,
determined to turn a
she
tragedy
hesitated.
into a spectacle.
There have been arguments. I heard them shouting in father's study a week before
Let
his
the
death.
man do his
Mr.
job,
Hartley said something
Vivian.
about not being cheated out of what's rightfully mine. Father ordered him to leave.
If there's
exchanged
anything I
glances
can
with
do to
Poirot.
help, Monsieur
The
Poirot,
picture forming was a familiar one. A wealthy man, a young wife, a disgruntled partner, a changed will. Who else resides at your father's home? Poirot inquired. Thornfield Hall is in Surrey. The household includes
I
my
understand
stepmother,
you were all
myself,
present at
my
dinner.
father's secretary, Mr. Davies. He's been
The
with us for
letter he
15
received
years,
that morning.
The housekeeper, Mrs. Finch, the cook, 2 maids, and a groundskeeper. Mr. Hartley lives in the village nearby and dined with us frequently. And on the night of your father's death, who was present at dinner? Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, as though the memory pained her. All of us. My stepmother, Mr. Hartley, Mr. Davies, and myself. Father seemed in good spirits, better than he had been in weeks. He even made a toast. To new beginnings, he said. Her voice broke. 20 minutes later, he was dead. Poirot rose and moved to the window, gazing out at the rain-slicked street. His reflection in the glass showed a face of intense concentration. You have been to the police, mademoiselle? Inspector Graves came from the local station. He
The
concluded
hunter
it was
becomes
natural
the
causes
prey,
within an hour.
Hastings.
He wouldn't even consider... She pressed a handkerchief to her eyes. He said I was overwrought with grief, that my feminine sensibilities were manufacturing suspicions where none existed. I saw Poirot's moustache twitch with displeasure. Whatever his old-fashioned views on certain matters, he had never dismissed feminine
he gave me a
intuition
chance
so
when no one
carelessly.
else would.
The body, Poirot
The
said,
decanter?
turning back to face her.
It was already
What has become of
unstoppered?
The funeral is tomorrow. That's why I came
No.
today. I'm running out
I
of
removed
time.
the stopper,
Please,
poured,
Monsieur
and
Poirot,
replaced it.
I know something is wrong. I can feel it. My father was frightened in his final days, and someone in that house knows why. Poirot was silent for a long moment. Then he crossed to where she sat and took her trembling hand in his. Mademoiselle Blackwood, you speak of feeling. This is good. The intuition? It should
I've
not be
already
dismissed.
told you
But I must
everything
ask
I
you
know.
something, and I require absolute honesty. His green eyes held hers.
Mr.
Do you suspect
Mr.
someone
Blackwood was a
specifically?
good employer.
Is there a person in
Yeah.
that house whom you believe capable of this
Oh,
crime?
yeah. The best I've ever
Eleanor's gaze
had.
flickered just for an instant
He
towards the
just-
fire.
He treated
I
me
cannot
like
say,
family.
not without evidence, but
She's not what she
she drew a
seems.
breath. My stepmother.
I've
She was
seen
so
her late
calm
at night.
after father died. So terribly, perfectly calm. She didn't shed a single tear. Grief manifests differently in different persons, I said gently. Perhaps, Captain, but she also asked about the will before the body was even cold. Poirot released her hand and straightened, his decision clearly made.
I hope this will be
Have George
brief,
prepare an
Monsieur
overnight
Poirot.
bath. We travel to Surrey on the evening train.
Your
He
husband.
turned to Miss Blackwood with a slight bow.
Your husband's mood.
Mademoiselle,
Was he
I
his
accept your
usual
case,
self?
But I warn you, Hercule
That
Poirot,
Marcus was
he does not
always
seek
busy.
convenient truths. He seeks the truth, however
Preoccupied.
uncomfortable it may prove. If I discover that your father died
There
of
are
natural
rumours,
causes,
madame,
I shall say so.
Of telephone
And if I
calls
discover
made in
his killer,
secret.
His voice dropped. I shall expose them, regardless of who they may be.
I was telephoning my
prepared
own
for this?
solicitor, making
Eleanor Blackwood
inquiries.
rose, and for the first time, I saw something like hope in her haunted eyes. I want
She
justice
is
for my
hiding
father,
something,
Monsieur
Poirot.
Whatever the cost. Bien. Then we shall find it together. The train to Surrey departed Waterloo at 6:30, And as the grey sprawl of London gave way to the darkening countryside, I found myself pondering the case
The
before
last
us.
will and testament
What do you
of
make of it,
Marcus
Poirot?
Edward
I
Blackwood.
asked. The young
To
wife
my
with the
wife,
convenient
Vivian
inheritance,
Blackwood,
the business partner with the
I
grievance.
leave the sum
It
of
seems rather
£10,000.
straightforward. Poirot, who had been gazing out the window at the rain-streaked
After
fields,
3
turned to me
years?
with a faint smile. Does it, mon ami? Then I wonder why it troubles
Should any
me so.
evidence emerge
Troubles you?
of conduct
The
unbecoming,
letter that was burned,
all
the will that was
bequests
changed,
shall be
the
forfeit.
argument overheard. He ticked off the points on his immaculate fingers. These are facts, yes, but facts can be misleading. They can point in the direction the clever criminal wishes us to look.
Conduct
You think we're being
unbecoming.
manipulated?
That's rather
I
vague,
think,
isn't it?
Hastings, that in a case where everyone has
What
motive,
troubled
we
him,
must
monsieur?
look not for who could
A
have committed
man
the
who
crime,
changes
but
his
for who
will
did.
twice in
The
3
method,
weeks.
the opportunity, the psychology, these will reveal the truth.
He was
He
frightened,
settled back
Monsieur
in his
Poirot.
seat. Tell me,
I have never
Sue,
seen
what do you
Marcus
observe about our
frightened before.
client? I considered. She seemed genuinely distressed, determined. She clearly suspects her stepmother, though she's trying to be fair about it. And her relationship with her father? Close.
What
I
is
should
this?
think. She noticed his mood changes, his distraction.
£700
She
to
paid
someone
attention
identified only as
Précisément.
MC.
Poirot nodded approvingly. And yet, she tells us she heard the contents, but did not investigate further. She saw him burn a letter, but did not ask its contents. She knew he changed his will, but not the details. His eyes glittered. This is a daughter who observes much, but interferes little. Whether from respect or from fear, I cannot yet say. Fear of her own father. Fear of knowledge, perhaps.
Once I'm his wife,
Sometimes, Hastings,
We'll have access
we
to
choose
everything.
not to know because knowing would require us to act. He stroked his
They are
moustache.
siblings,
But
Hastings.
this is speculation.
A conspiracy of
Tomorrow
blood.
we shall meet the household of Thornfield Hall. And then, mon ami, the little grey cells will have much to consider. The train rattled on through the darkness, carrying us toward a house of secrets, where death had struck, and where, I was increasingly certain, a murderer still walked free. Chapter 2. Thornfield Hall. Thornfield Hall emerged from the morning mist like a spectre of faded grandeur. The house was Georgian,
The
built
same
of
bitter
honey-coloured stone
undertone,
that the years had darkened to
digitalis.
the shade of old parchment. Ivy climbed its eastern wall with tenacious fingers, and the windows,
I should have said it from the
tall,
beginning.
mullioned, numerous, stared down at our approaching taxi like watchful eyes.
Someone is poisoning
Quite
this
impressive,
household.
I murmured as we turned into the long gravel drive. Impressive, yes, Poirot agreed,
Too
though his tone
poisoning.
suggested he found the creeping
Why
vegetation and weathered stonework somewhat less than ideal. But in need, I think, of attention. The gardens, they have been neglected. And observe,
Tonight,
Hastings.
I shall
the
set a
shutters
trap,
on the upper floor,
and
they
the
do not
killer
match.
will reveal
One has been
themselves.
recently replaced. I squinted at the house, but could discern no such detail. Poirot's powers of observation never ceased to humble me. Eleanor Blackwood met us at the door, dressed in
Digitalis.
mourning black that accentuated
It
her
grows
pallor.
in abundance
The
here.
sleepless night had left shadows beneath her eyes, but her handshake was firm and her voice steady. Thank you for coming so quickly.
Anyone
The
could have
funeral is
picked
at
them,
2
Monsieur
o'clock.
Poirot.
I hoped you might observe the mourners. An excellent thought. On Mademoiselle. Poirot handed his coat and hat to the waiting butler, a thin, elderly man with the impassive face of long service. But first, if you will permit, I should like to see the room where your father died. The dining room. Yes, of course. She hesitated. But I should warn you, my stepmother is not pleased about your presence. She considers it an insult to my father's memory. Indeed, Poirot's eyebrows rose. Then we shall endeavor to be discreet, for now. The entrance hall was paneled in dark oak, the ceiling high and shadowed. A wide staircase swept upward to the first floor, and everywhere
was
I
a
looked,
man
I
of
saw
many
evidence
secrets,
of
your
wealth
father.
carefully accumulated. Oil paintings in gilt
His
frames,
face went white as
porcelain
chalk.
vases
He
on marble
burned it
pedestals,
immediately.
a grandfather clock whose steady tick seemed to mark time with particular gravity. The dining room is through here.
It has come to this.
Eleanor led us across the hall to a pair of double doors. Everything has been left as it was, I insisted. The room beyond was long and formal, dominated by a mahogany table that could seat 12.
And that's when I
Heavy
left the room.
curtains framed the windows, and the
And
sideboard against the far wall held
your
crystal
stepmother,
decanters
she
and
was
silver
present?
serving pieces. The chairs had been pushed back from the table, all except one at the head, which remained precisely positioned. My father's chair, Eleanor said quietly.
Two
He
poisoners.
was sitting there when it happened. Poirot moved
Surely
slowly
that's
around the
impossible,
table,
Poirot.
his eyes missing nothing. He examined the chair,
In
the
this
table
house,
setting before
Hastings,
it, the floor
the
beneath.
impossible is
He
merely
opened
the
sideboard
truth we
and
have not
inspected
yet
its contents.
found.
He even lifted the edge of the tablecloth to peer underneath. The dinner service from that evening, it has been washed. Yes, Mrs. Finch saw to it the next morning before I could stop her. A pity. Poirot straightened. And the wine? What was served? Claret with the main course. Brandy afterward. Father always took a brandy after dinner. It was his one indulgence. The brandy decanter? It is which one?
You always were the greedy
Eleanor pointed to
one,
a
Vivian.
cut crystal vessel on the sideboard. That one. The others haven't been touched in
And
months.
you were always the
Poirot
fool,
unstopped
Gerald.
the decanter and raised it to his nose, inhaling delicately. His expression remained neutral, but I saw his fingers tighten almost imperceptibly on the crystal. This brandy, it has been here since that night? Yes, no one has touched it. I told Mrs. Finch to leave it. Bien. He replaced the stopper carefully. And your father,
past.
he poured his own brandy, or was it poured for him?
The past.
Eleanor frowned.
But it
clearly
always
trying to
catches up,
remember.
non?
I'm not
If
certain.
they are siblings,
Usually he poured his own.
why the
but
deception?
that night, she shook her head. I was speaking with Mr. Davies about a book
As a
he'd
widow,
read.
she
I wasn't
inherits. As a sister,
we
she
shall ask
gets
the others.
nothing.
Poirot turned in a slow circle, taking in the room. Now, mademoiselle, I should like to meet the household. Perhaps you would be so good as to introduce me? The drawing room where we gathered was furnished in the Victorian style. Heavy furniture, dark fabrics, an abundance of ornaments that made Poirot visibly uncomfortable. I noticed him subtly adjusting a porcelain shepherdess on the mantelpiece as Eleanor went to summon the others. The first to enter was a woman I knew immediately must be Vivian Blackwood. She was, as Eleanor had said, or young, no more than 32 or 33.
We need
the
to talk
kind of
about your
beauty that
sister,
commanded
Monsieur
attention.
Hartley.
Honey blonde hair swept back from a face of classical
How?
proportions, and her morning dress, though appropriately somber, was cut
How?
with unmistakable
How did you find
Parisian
that?
elegance. Monsieur Poirot. Her voice was cool, her handshake brief. My stepdaughter seems determined to turn a private tragedy into a public spectacle. I hope you will conclude your investigation quickly. I shall endeavor to be thorough rather than hasty, madam. Poirot
The
replied
audio is
smoothly.
dominated by the
The
sound
truth,
of a man
it does not
speaking in
always
a
reveal itself
low,
on
resentful
command.
tone, punctuated
The
by
truth
heavy,
is that my
shaky...
husband died of heart failure.
And the
The
brandy?
doctor confirmed it. I see no
Whose
need
idea
to-
was that?
Vivian. The voice came from the doorway, deep and commanding. A man entered, tall, broad-shouldered, on with iron grey hair and the weathered complexion of one who spent time outdoors.
The confession begins,
Let the man
Hastings.
do his job.
But
Marcus
it is
wouldn't have
not
wanted
yet
his death
complete.
to become a source of discord. Mr. Gerald Hartley.
Who had
I
the key to
presume?
the library last
Poirot
night?
extended his hand.
Who had the key
The
to the
same.
library last night?
Hartley's grip was firm. His gaze
The library
direct.
is never locked,
Marcus
sir.
was my partner and my
It was
friend for
Mr.
20 years.
Blackwood's
If
wish.
there's any question about how he died, I want answers as much as anyone. Behind him came a slight,
1 hour until
respectable
our little
man of
gathering,
perhaps
Hastings.
40, neat, unobtrusive, with the self-effacing manner of one accustomed to remaining in the background. Mr. Davies, Eleanor said, my father's secretary. Private secretary, Davies corrected gently. Mr. Blackwood was kind enough to give me that title. He shook Poirot's hand with a grip that was surprisingly firm for such a mild-seeming man. I've been with the family for 15 years. If there's anything I can do to help, Monsieur Poirot, you have only to ask. Merci, monsieur. I shall certainly take advantage of your knowledge. The final member of the household to join us was Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, a stout, capable-looking woman in her 50s with grey streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun. She stood near the door, clearly uncomfortable in the presence of her employers. Now then, Poirot said, settling into a chair with the air of a man preparing for a pleasant chat.
Are you
I
ready,
have some
mon
questions
ami?
regarding the evening of Mr. Blackwood's death. I understand you were all present at dinner? We were, Vivian said.
Mesdames et
It was
messieurs,
a perfectly ordinary
let us
evening
begin.
until Marcus. She pressed a
The
handkerchief
death
to
of
her
Marcus
lips.
Blackwood
The
was
gesture
not
elegant,
a natural
the emotion
occurrence.
questionable. So
It was
describe the meal,
murder.
if you please. Soup to start, then roast lamb with vegetables. A trifle for dessert. She shrugged. Nothing unusual. Marcus ate well. He seemed in excellent spirits. He had recovered then from whatever troubled him earlier that day. Vivian's eyes flickered. I don't know what you mean. The letter, madame. The letter he received that morning and subsequently burned. A silence fell over the room. I saw glances exchanged.
Too many
Hartley's
suspects.
jaw tightening.
Too many
James's hand
motives.
moving to adjust his spectacles. Mrs. Finch's
web
eyes
of
dropping to the
deceit.
floor.
Each
I know nothing
strand
about any letter,
placed to
Vivian said
obscure the
coolly.
truth.
Nor I, Hartley added. Though Marcus
Let us
did
begin
seem
with you,
preoccupied
Vivian
when I arrived for
Blackwood.
dinner.
Or
I
should
assumed
I
it was
say,
business matters.
Vivian Hartley.
The letter came by
How?
the Morning Post. Mrs. Finch spoke up suddenly. I brought it to Mr. Blackwood myself. Plain envelope, typewritten address. He
You.
read it in his study and burned it straight after.
Siblings?
I saw the ashes in the fireplace when I came to dust. Thank you, Mrs.
A
Finch.
scheme
You
devised
are
to
most
gain
observant.
control of Blackwood and
Poirot
Hartley
stroked his
imports.
moustache. Now, the brandy after dinner. Who poured it?
Once you're his
Another
wife,
silence.
we'll have
This one
access to
heavier than before.
Everything.
I'm not certain, Vivian said slowly. Marcus usually poured his
But
own.
Marcus Blackwood was
The
cleverer
decanter
than
was
you
on the sideboard,
supposed.
Hartley said. Anyone might have poured it.
3 months ago, he
I was
hired a
helping clear
private
the soup
investigator.
bowls, Mrs. Finch offered. I didn't see. Davies cleared his
He
throat.
learned of the concealed
I believe I
relationship
may have poured it,
and the
actually.
scandal in
Mr.
Manchester.
Blackwood asked me to fetch him a brandy while he finished his conversation with Mrs. Blackwood. I brought it to him at the table.
This
Poirot's
is
eyes
outrageous.
Ah, you
Marcus
are
would
certain
never.
of this?
The
Mr.
truth,
Davies?
madame.
Is
Quite
often
certain.
outrageous.
I remember because he thanked me. He always thanked the staff, even for small things. It was one of his qualities. Davy's voice caught slightly. I handed him the glass. He drank perhaps half before,
He reduced your
Before it
inheritance
and the symptoms
and added a
they began
codicil
how
for
long after he drank?
misconduct.
Minutes, no more than 5. Davies removed his spectacles and polished them with trembling hands. He clutched his chest. His face went grey. He tried to stand, but
There were
collapsed.
not one,
By the time Dr. Pearson arrived,
but
he was
2
gone.
poisoned vessels
Dr.
in this
Pearson,
house.
this is the local physician. Yes, his surgery is in the village. He arrived within 20 minutes, but there was nothing to be done. Poirot nodded slowly. I shall wish
The
to
brandy,
speak with Dr. Pearson.
The
But
Pax
first,
Worts, poisoned
he
with
rose and moved to the
digitalis
window,
from the
gazing out
garden.
at the grounds. Tell me about the business. Monsieur Hartley, Blackwood and Hartley Imports. It prospers? Hartley's expression tightened.
The
It did,
whiskey,
until
also
recently.
poisoned,
Recently. The war
but
changed
for a
everything.
different victim.
Supply lines disrupted, clients lost, costs increased. He spread his hands. We've been struggling for the past 2 years. Marcus and I disagreed about how to address it.
Someone decided the partnership had
Disagreed strongly,
outlived
I am
its
told.
usefulness.
Voices were raised. We argued, yes, business partners do. It doesn't mean Hartley stopped, his face darkening. Who told you that? Eleanor? She never understood business matters. I understand that you felt you were being cheated,
I
monsieur.
found this hidden
The room
beneath
went
a
very still.
floorboard in your
Hartley's
closet,
hands clenched at
madame.
his sides. I said nothing of the kind. No, those were not your words. I will not be cheated out of what is rightfully mine.
Digitalis
was-
preparation.
That
Det
was about a
signified
contract
Wesen
negotiation.
was called.
A supplier was
Dated
trying
1
to
week
undercut
before
us.
your husband's
I was
death.
frustrated. It had nothing to do with Marcus.
You tried to
personally.
kill me.
I see.
After all,
Poirot turned
I
from the
did
window.
for you.
And the will, Madame Blackwood. You have been informed of its contents? Vivian's composure slipped just for a moment. The reading is tomorrow, after the funeral.
And you,
But
Monsieur
you have
Hartley, the
expectations,
brandy,
naturellement.
the brandy decanter?
I expect to be provided.
That was your work.
Marcus was a generous man.
The fingerprint
Beyond
on the
that, I
stopper.
have made
It
no
matches yours
assumptions.
precisely.
How admirable. Poirot's tone was unreadable. Now, I believe I have
supposed to
taken
be
enough of your
painless.
time before this sad occasion. Captain
I never
Hastings and I
wanted him
will
to
attend the
suffer.
funeral with your permission, and afterward, I
2
shall have more
poisoners,
questions.
2
meantime,
betrayals, a double
His
cross
gaze swept the room,
revealed.
touching each face in turn.
You
I advise you all
used
to
me!
reflect carefully on that evening.
You
Small
promised
details,
we would
easily
share
overlooked, may
everything!
prove to be of the greatest importance.
I didn't
didn't know about
The
the
funeral
will!
was a somber affair,
Marcus never
held in the
told
village
me!
church of St. Michael's, under a sky that threatened rain without delivering it.
Silence.
I watched the mourners carefully.
The recriminations,
as Poirot had instructed,
they are
but saw nothing
pointless
overtly
now.
suspicious. Only the usual gradations of grief, from Eleanor's
Gerald
quiet
Hartley,
tears to Vivian's
Vivian
composed
Blackwood.
dignity to Hartley's stern-faced
I am arresting
silence.
you both.
Afterward, as the gathering dispersed to the churchyard, Poirot drew me aside. Well, Hastings, what do you observe? Hartley seems the obvious suspect, I said. The argument, the financial troubles, the comment about being cheated, and he was clearly uncomfortable when you pressed him. Indeed. And Madame Blackwood? Cold, calculating perhaps. She asked about the will almost immediately after her husband died. That's hardly the behavior of a grieving widow. And Monsieur Davies? I hesitated. He admitted to pouring
Justice
the brandy.
is served, mademoiselle.
That seems rather incriminating.
But at a heavy
Does
price.
it? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Or does it seem rather too convenient? A guilty man admitting freely to the one action that placed poison in the victim's hand? You think he's innocent? I think, mon ami, that nothing is as it appears in this house. The little grey cells, they detect the presence of a clever mind, one who has laid a trail for us to follow. He watched the mourners file past the grave. But trails can be followed in both directions.
Remarkable,
Sometimes,
Poirot.
Hastings, the
Simply
hunter, becomes the
remarkable.
prey. A distant rumble of thunder rolled across the Surrey hills.
The little grey
The storm, it
cells,
seemed,
Hastings.
was finally coming. To chapter 3,
They never fail.
The Web of Lies. The
Dream
morning
close-up
following the
of a drop
funeral
of
dawned
digitalis
grey and
extract
sodden,
falling into
the
a
storm
petri
having
dish.
broken during the night with considerable violence. I woke to the sound of rain lashing
Digitalis,
against my window
the silent
and the distant
killer.
rumble of thunder retreating toward the coast. Poirot, I discovered upon descending to the breakfast room, had been awake for hours. He sat at the table with a cup of his preferred tisane, a small notebook open before him, his egg-shaped head bent in concentration. "You have slept well, Hastings?" he inquired without looking up. "Tolerably. And you?" The
Visual
little grey
diagram
cells,
showing
they
the
do not
chemical
rest when there
structure
is a
of
puzzle to be
digitalis.
solved. He closed
Visual
the notebook
overlay.
and tucked it into his breast pocket. Today, we conduct the interviews properly, one by one, in private. The group dynamic, it conceals as much as it reveals. Where shall we begin? With the person who knew Marcus Blackwood best, his secretary, Monsieur Davies, a man who has spent 15 years at his employer's side, sees much that others miss. Poirot dabbed his moustache with a napkin.
Flashback.
Also, he
An
has
older
admitted to
Caucasian
pouring the
man,
fatal
Gerald
brandy.
Hartley,
This
standing
admission,
alone in the
it
garden
intrigues
at
me
dusk,
greatly.
wearing a
I
simple
helped myself
cardigan.
to eggs and toast from the sideboard. You don't believe he did it? I believe, mon ami, that a guilty man does not volunteer such information. Unless... His eyes glittered. Unless he is very clever indeed, and believes that his honesty will place him above suspicion, we shall see which Monsieur Davies proves to be. We found Davies in the study that had belonged to his late employer, a comfortable room
Poirot
lined
at
with
his desk
bookshelves,
in London,
seeing its large
writing a
desk
letter
covered with
with a
neat stacks
fountain
of
pen.
correspondence. The secretary rose as we entered, his mild face anxious behind his spectacles. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, please sit down. I've been going through Mr.
Captain
Blackwood's
Hastings,
papers,
a
trying to ensure
middle-aged
everything is in
Caucasian
order for
man
the
with a
solicitor.
neatly trimmed beard,
Most
looking through a
conscientious.
telescope at the manor's driveway.
Poirot settled into a leather armchair, his sharp eyes surveying the room. You were devoted to your employer.
The solicitor has arrived, Poirot.
He was more than an employer to me.
The heavy front door
He was,
of Thornfield Hall,
Davies
closing
hesitated,
with a thud.
removing his spectacles to polish them. A nervous habit, I noted. He gave me a chance when no one else would. 15 years ago, I was in considerable trouble, financial difficulties, some poor decisions. Mr. Blackwood hired me when others wouldn't even grant me anything. He believed in second chances. A generous man. The most generous I have ever known. Davies replaced his spectacles with hands that trembled slightly.
Michael Crane, the
Which is
Hispanic
why this
male
notion that
investigator
someone
in his
murdered
late
him,
20s,
it sickens
looking
me.
at a surveillance
Who
photo.
could do such a thing? Poirot leaned forward. That is precisely what I intend to discover. Now, monsieur, I must ask you some difficult questions. You will answer honestly, yes? Of course. The evening of Mr. Blackwood's death, you have told us that you poured his brandy. Describe the moment precisely. Davies closed his eyes, clearly summoning the memory. Mr. Blackwood was seated at the head of the table. Mrs. Blackwood was speaking to him. Something about redecorating the morning room, I believe. He turned to me and said, "Davies, be a good fellow and fetch me a brandy, would you?" I went to the sideboard, so poured from the decanter and brought the glass to him. The decanter, it was already unstoppered? No, I removed the stopper, poured, and replaced it. And you handled only the one glass? Only the one. Where were the other guests at this moment? Davies considered. Miss Blackwood was near the window, looking out at the garden. Mr. Hartley was examining the painting above the fireplace.
The psychology of the
landscape
killer,
Mr. Blackwood
that
purchased last
is the
spring.
key.
Mrs. Finch was clearing dessert plates. So all were occupied. No one observed you pour the brandy? I suppose not. Davies' face paled. Monsieur Poirot, surely you don't think... I think nothing yet, monsieur. I merely establish facts. Poirot's tone softened. Now, the letter that arrived that
Flashback.
morning.
A
You were Mr.
middle-aged
Blackwood's private
African-American
secretary.
Marcus
Did you see it?
Blackwood clutching his heart
No.
at the dinner table.
Mrs. Finch brought the post directly to Mr. Blackwood that morning. He had given instructions that his personal correspondence was not to be opened by anyone else. A recent instruction, I should add.
The spilled
only within the past
claret
month.
on the white
Curious.
tablecloth,
And before this
looking
instruction,
like blood.
I opened all his letters, sorted them by priority, prepared responses for his signature. It had been our routine for 15 years. Davies' voice carried a note of hurt. The change was unexpected. Did you ask him why? I did. He said only that it was a private matter and that I should not concern myself. Davies spread his hands. I respected his wishes, though I confess I was troubled. Mr. Blackwood had never kept secrets from me before. Poirot stroked his moustache thoughtfully. You mentioned the business was struggling. What do you know of the disagreements between Mr. Blackwood and Mr. Hartley? More than I should, perhaps. Davies glanced toward the door, lowering his voice. Mr. Hartley wanted to sell the company. There had been an offer from a larger firm. Mr. Blackwood refused. He said the business was his legacy, that he would rather go bankrupt than see it
The
absorbed by
butler
strangers.
standing in the shadows of the hallway,
And Mr. Hartley's
watching
response?
Poirot.
He was furious. He accused Mr. Blackwood of putting sentiment above sense. He said... Davies stopped, clearly uncomfortable. Continue, monsieur. What did he say? He said that Mr. Blackwood cared more about his name on a building than about the people who had helped him build it. That 20 years of partnership entitled him to a say in the company's future. Davies shook his head. It was an ugly argument. I heard it through the study door. I was not eavesdropping deliberately, you understand. Naturellement, and after this argument, they barely spoke for a week. Then, 3 days before Mr. Blackwood died, they had another meeting. Private. But when Mr. Hartley left, he seemed...
See, mon ami, the precise location.
Calmer,
The intersection of the bridle
almost
path
satisfied.
and the old Roman road.
Poirot's
By Jove,
eyes
Poirot,
narrowed,
you mean they cut across here?
as though an
The
agreement
chemist
had been
is
reached.
located here, Hastings.
Perhaps.
Right
I
next to
cannot
the
say for
tobacconist,
certain.
then.
One more question, Monsieur Davies. The changed will. Do you know anything of its contents? Davies hesitated. A fraction too long, I thought. I know only that Mr. Blackwood met with his solicitor, Mr. Pemberton, approximately 3 weeks ago. I was not present for the discussion. But you suspect something? I suspect nothing. The words came too quickly. I am merely the secretary.
paper trail
Such matters are above my position.
never lies.
Poirot regarded him steadily for a long moment, then rose. Thank you, Mr. Davies. You have been most helpful. We shall speak again. Our next interview was with Mrs. Finch, conducted in the housekeeper's sitting room, a small, comfortable space adjacent to the kitchen. The woman sat rigidly upright, her hands folded in her lap, her expression wary. I've already told you everything I know, she said before Poirot could speak. The letter came by the morning post, plain envelope, typewritten address. I brought it to Mr. Blackwood, and he burned it. That's all. You saw him burn it? Not directly, but I saw the ashes when I came to dust. Fresh ashes, still warm. And his demeanor afterward? Mrs. Finch's rigid posture softened slightly. He was troubled, sat at his desk for an hour, staring at nothing. When I brought his tea, he didn't even notice I'd entered the room. That wasn't like him. Mr. Blackwood always had a kind word. He was a good employer? The best I've ever had. Her voice caught. 20 years I've kept this house. He treated me like family, not like some... She stopped herself. Not like some? Poirot prompted gently. Mrs. Finch's lips thinned. It's not my place to speak ill of the mistress. But you would, if it were your place? A long pause. Then, Mrs. Blackwood, the new Mrs. Blackwood, she's not what she seems. All sweetness when Mr. Blackwood was watching, but the moment his back was turned, she shook her head. I've seen her, late at night, going through papers in the study. I've heard her on the telephone, speaking to someone in hushed tones. And the way she looked at him sometimes, when she thought no one was watching, how did she look at him? Like she was waiting for something, like she was calculating. This is a serious accusation, madame. It's not an accusation, it's an observation. Mrs. Finch drew herself up. I'm a servant, Monsieur Poirot. We see everything and say nothing. But if you're asking whether I think she loved him, her voice hardened. She loved his money. That's all she ever loved. Poirot nodded slowly. And on the night of the dinner, you were present throughout the meal? Serving and clearing, yes. Cook prepared the food, but I brought it to the table. Did you observe anyone approach the brandy decanter before Monsieur Davies poured for Mr. Blackwood? Mrs. Finch's brow furrowed. The decanter was on the sideboard all evening. Anyone might have touched it when I was in the kitchen. She paused, her expression changing. Though now you mention it. Yes. I did see Mrs. Blackwood near the sideboard earlier, before the main course. She said she was checking the wine, making sure it was breathing properly. But she was standing right next to the brandy. Poirot's moustache twitched. Merci, Madame Finch. This is most illuminating. Vivian Blackwood received us in the morning room, a bright space that contrasted sharply with the dark formality of the rest of the house. She was dressed in elegant black, her golden hair perfectly arranged, her composure absolute. I hope this will be brief, Monsieur Poirot. The solicitor arrives within the hour for the reading of the will, and I have much to prepare. Of course, madame, and I shall be as swift as circumstances permit. Poirot settled into a chair opposite her. Tell me, your husband's mood in the weeks before his death, was he his usual self? Marcus was always busy, preoccupied with business matters. She waved a dismissive hand. If he seemed troubled, I assumed it was financial concerns. Gerald, Mr. Hartley, had been pressing him about some business decision. The sale of the company? I don't concern myself with such matters. They bore me. And yet I understand you were overheard asking about the will before your husband's body had even been removed. For the first time, a crack appeared in Vivian's composure. Her eyes flashed. Who told you that? Eleanor, I suppose. That girl has always resented me. Is it true? I asked when the solicitor would be coming. Her voice was tight. It was a practical question. Someone had to think of practical matters. Eleanor was hysterical. The servants were in shock. I merely took charge. A natural response for some. Others might find it cold. I am not responsible for how others interpret my grief. Vivian's jaw tightened. I loved Marcus, in my own way. We had an understanding. He wanted a companion, someone to manage his household and accompany him in society. I provided that. If our marriage lacked passion, it did not lack affection. And yet, there are rumors, madame, of telephone calls made in secret, of papers examined late at night. Vivian went very still. The servants gossip. It means nothing. Does it? Then you will not object to telling me whom you telephoned and what papers you examined? A long silence stretched between them. As I watched Vivian's face cycle through several emotions, anger, calculation, and finally, resignation. Very well, if you must know. She rose and moved to the window, her back to us. I was telephoning my solicitor, my own solicitor, not Marcus's. I was making inquiries about my legal position. Your legal position? As his wife, what I might be entitled to, what protections I might have. She turned, her expression defiant. Marcus had been behaving strangely, distant, meeting with his solicitor privately. I began to fear he was planning to divorce me, or worse, to cut me out of his will entirely. I needed to know where I stood. And the papers? I was looking for a copy of the will. I never found it. She returned to her chair, her composure restored. So you see, Monsieur Poirot, I had no reason to kill my husband. If anything, I needed him alive until I knew my position was secure. Unless, Poirot said quietly, you discovered that your position was not secure at all, and decided to act before changes could be made. Vivian's eyes met his, and for a moment I saw something cold and dangerous flicker in their depths. You have an active imagination, Monsieur Poirot. I suggest you direct it elsewhere. As we left the morning room, the clock in the hall struck 11. The solicitor would arrive soon, and with him, the revelation of the will's contents. What do you make of her, Poirot? I asked in a low voice. She is afraid, Hastings. Afraid, and hiding something. He paused by the window, gazing out at the rain-soaked gardens. But is she afraid because she is guilty? Or because she knows more than she is willing to tell? Anne Davies? Hartley? Mrs. Yeti Finch? Each has secrets. Each has motive. Each had opportunity. He shook his head slowly. The web, it grows more tangled with each thread we pull. But somewhere, mon ami, there is a single strand that will unravel everything. We must find it. The sound of a motor car on the gravel drive announced the solicitor's arrival. The reading of the will was about to begin, and with it, perhaps, the revelation that would point us toward the truth. Chapter 4. Threads Unraveling. Mr. Pemberton, the solicitor, was a man constructed entirely of sharp angles, pointed nose, jutting chin, elbows that seemed designed to occupy maximum space. He arrived precisely at noon, shaking rain from his umbrella with an expression of profound disapproval, as though the weather had personally inconvenienced him. "See a dreadful business," he muttered as Eleanor led him to the drawing room where the household had assembled. "Dreadful. Marcus was a client for 30 years. Never expected to outlive him." Poirot and I positioned ourselves discreetly near the door, observers rather than participants. The room held all the principal players. Eleanor, pale but composed, Vivian, immaculate in her morning dress, her hands folded with studied calm, Gerald Hartley, standing by the fireplace with barely concealed impatience, Davies, seated slightly apart, his notebook ready as though he might be called upon to take dictation at any moment. Mrs. Finch
The
hovered near the
rain
entrance,
slicked
uncertain
pavement,
where the servants were meant to be
reflecting the
present.
manor's windows.
Pemberton's sharp glance suggested they were not, but Eleanor interceded. "Mrs. Finch has been with us for 20 years, Mr. Hot Pemberton. Father would have wanted her here." The solicitor sniffed but made no further objection. He withdrew a thick document from his leather case and adjusted his pince-nez with deliberate precision. "The last will and testament of Marcus Edward Blackwood," he announced, "dated the 14th of September this year, 3 weeks
Poirot's
prior to the
hand
deceased's passing.
gently touching the
I saw
charred
glances
fragments of the
exchanged around
burned
the room.
letter.
This was the new will, then, the one that had caused such speculation. I shall summarize the principal bequests. Pemberton cleared his throat. To Mrs. Finch, in recognition of 20 years of faithful service, the sum of £500 and residence in the Gatehouse cottage for the remainder of her natural life. Mrs. Finch pressed a handkerchief to her eyes, genuinely moved. To Gerald Hartley, my partner and
Captain
friend,
Hastings
and I
cleaning
leave my
his
shares
service
in Blackwood
revolver.
and Hartley Imports, making him sole proprietor of the company on the condition that the firm retained the Blackwood name for a minimum of 10 years. Hartley's expression shifted. Surprise, certainly, but something else beneath it. Satisfaction? Relief? I could not be certain. To my daughter Eleanor, Pemberton continued, I leave the sum of £30,000 to be held in trust until her 30th birthday, with an annual allowance of £1,000 until that time.
Poirot's face
Additionally,
illuminated
she shall
by a
receive
match
all
strike.
personal effects belonging to her late mother, currently stored in the East Wing. Eleanor nodded, unsurprised. It was a generous provision, if not extravagant. To my wife, Vivian Blackwood, the room seemed to hold its breath. Rotune, I leave the sum of £10,000 and the London townhouse in Belgrave Square to be held in her name absolutely. She may reside at Thornfield Hall for a period not exceeding 6 months from the date of my death, after which time the property shall pass entirely to my daughter Eleanor. The silence that followed was absolute. Vivian's face had gone white, not with grief, but with fury barely contained. £10,000? Her voice was ice. 6 months? After 3 years of marriage, this is my reward? There is more, madam, Pemberton said.
One
his
must
tone
follow
neutral.
the thread.
A codicil,
to the very
added 1
centre.
week before Mr. Blackwood's death. Another document emerged from the case. The solicitor's eyes scanned it briefly before continuing. I, Marcus Edward Blackwood, being of sound mind, do hereby add the following provision. Should any evidence emerge, prior to or following my death, that my wife, Vivian Blackwood, has engaged in
Poirot
conduct
and Graves
unbecoming
looking
to
at
her
a
marriage
fingerprint
vows,
comparison
all
chart.
bequests to her shall be forfeit, and the sums designated shall instead pass to my daughter.
It's a
Eleanor.
match, Poirot. No
This
doubt
is
about it.
outrageous. Vivian laughed, her composure shattered entirely. Marcus
when
would
we went
never.
camping and it
Someone has
rained the
tampered
whole
with this
time?
document.
How could I forget you
I
cried
assure you,
because your
madam,
sleeping
the
bag got
signature is
wet?
genuine
It was
and was witnessed by
freezing.
my clerk. Pemberton's voice held a note of cold satisfaction. Your husband was quite specific in his instructions. Conduct unbecoming.
Close-up of the solicitor's
Arnold
hand
spoke for the
sealing an
first time,
envelope
his
with
voice
red
thoughtful.
wax.
That's rather vague, isn't it? What exactly did Marcus suspect? I am not at liberty to discuss my client's private concerns. Pemberton began returning documents to his case. Suffice to say that Mr. Blackwood had reasons for his caution. Poirot stepped forward, his presence commanding attention despite his small stature. Forgive the interruption, Monsieur Pemberton. I am Hercule Poirot, engaged by Mademoiselle Blackwood to investigate the circumstances of her father's death. Perhaps you might shed some light on the deceased's state of mind when he added this codicil? Pemberton regarded him with suspicion. And what authority have you to question me? None at all.
How
But a
could you
man
be
who
so
changes his will
reckless? You've
twice in 3
jeopardized
weeks,
everything.
First to restructure
I did
his
what had to be
bequests
done.
entirely,
You're just too
then
blind
to add a
to see
codicil
it.
suggesting marital misconduct. Such a
I
man
will
is
not
clearly
be
troubled.
cheated.
What troubled him, monsieur?
Mother.
The solicitor
Sure, I-
hesitated,
I-
glancing at the assembled faces. Finally, he sighed. Marcus came to me 3 weeks ago in considerable distress, and he said he had received information, he did not specify
And
its
finally,
source,
the picture is
suggesting
complete.
that his wife was not what she appeared to be. He wished to protect his assets and his daughter's inheritance.
Vivian Blackwood,
Information of
an
what
elderly
nature?
African woman,
He would not
looking
say
at her
precisely,
reflection in a
only
dark
that he had been
window at
deceived,
night.
and that he intended to discover the full extent of the deception before taking further action. Pemberton snapped his case closed. 1 week later, he returned with the
Poirot,
codicil.
Hastings and
He said he
Graves
had proof,
standing in the
or would have
hallway,
it soon.
ready for the
He was
final batch.
Frightened, Monsieur Poirot. I have never seen Marcus Blackwood frightened before.
Now,
And then he
for the
died.
Friday, for the
And then
final
he died.
reckoning.
Pemberton's voice was grim. I advised him to go to the police with whatever he had discovered. He refused. He said it was a private matter, to be handled privately. A decision that may have cost him his life. That, Monsieur Poirot, is for you to determine.
A chair
The reading
empty,
concluded, the household
a
dispersed in
life
various states of
stolen for
agitation.
gold.
Vivian swept from the room without a word, her face a mask of barely controlled rage. Hartley followed shortly after, pausing only to shake Pemberton's hand with what seemed like genuine gratitude. Eleanor remained, her expression troubled. Monsieur Poirot, she said quietly, my father suspected Vivian of something serious. The codicil proves it. Surely this gives her motive. It gives her motive to wish the codicil undiscovered, mademoiselle, not to murder your father. If she killed him before the reading of the will, she could not know its contents. Unless... Poirot's eyes narrowed. Unless she had already discovered them. The papers she was searching for? Précisément. If she found a copy of the will or the codicil, she would know that her husband intended to disinherit her and that he possessed proof of her misconduct. He stroked his moustache thoughtfully. Tell me, mademoiselle, have you any idea what this misconduct might be? Eleanor hesitated. There were rumors, before she married father, about her past. What manner of rumors? That she had been involved with another man, a married man, that there was a scandal, hushed up with money. Eleanor shook her head. I never believed them, or rather, I chose not to investigate. Father seemed happy. I didn't want to spoil it. And now? Now I wonder if I should have looked more closely. Poirot spent the afternoon in Marcus Blackwood's study and examining papers with the intensity of a man searching for gold dust in river sand. I assisted as best I could, though my untrained eye found little of interest in the endless correspondence and business documents. "What exactly are we looking for?" I asked, setting aside yet another folder of shipping manifests. "Evidence, Hastings. Evidence of whatever Monsieur Blackwood discovered about his wife, evidence of the threatening letter, evidence of—" He stopped suddenly, his hand hovering over a leather-bound ledger. "Ah, what is this?" He drew the ledger from beneath a stack of files and opened it carefully. His eyebrows rose. "A private account book, not related to the business, personal expenditures only." His finger traced the entries. "And here, Hastings, look, a payment of £500, made 3 months ago, are to someone listed only as MC, and another, 1 month ago, of £200 to the same recipient. Blackmail? Perhaps. Or investigation, a private inquiry agent paid to discover information." Poirot turned more pages. "And here, a payment to Pemberton noted as codicil preparation. The date matches what the solicitor told us." So Blackwood was paying someone to investigate his wife? It would appear so. The question is, what did this MC discover, and where is the report? We searched for another hour without success. Whatever findings the mysterious MC had delivered, they were not among Blackwood's papers. Destroyed, perhaps, or hidden somewhere we had not yet discovered. It was nearly 5 o'clock when Mrs. Finch appeared at the study door, her face ashen. "Monsieur Poirot, you must come quickly. There's been an incident." We found Gerald Hartley in the library, slumped in a leather armchair, a broken glass at his feet, and the sharp smell of whiskey in the air. His face was grey, his breathing labored, and Eleanor knelt beside him, supporting his head. "He collapsed," she said, her voice trembling, "just like father. He poured himself a drink and then—" "Call for the doctor!" I shouted to Mrs. Finch, already moving toward Hartley. "Quickly!" Poirot, however, did not move toward the victim. Instead, his sharp eyes surveyed the room. The decanter on the side table, the broken glass, the pattern of spilled liquid on the carpet. "Hastings," he said quietly, "observe the glass, the manner in which it fell." I looked. The glass lay near Hartley's right foot, shattered into several pieces. The whiskey had splashed outward in a pattern consistent with being dropped from a height. "He dropped it when he collapsed. What of it?" "The decanter, Hastings. Look at the decanter." I looked. It appeared perfectly ordinary, cut crystal, half full of amber liquid. "I see nothing unusual." "Précisément, you see nothing unusual because you are meant to see nothing unusual." Poirot crossed to the side table and, without touching the decanter, bent to examine it closely. His nostrils flared. "Hastings, smell. But do not inhale deeply." I leaned in cautiously. Beneath the sharp scent of whiskey, there was something else, faint, bitter, almost medicinal. Poison? It would seem so. Someone has made a second attempt. Poirot straightened, his face grave. "The question is, was Mr. Hartley the intended victim, or was he merely the first to drink from a decanter meant for another?" Dr. Pearson arrived within 20 minutes, his bag in hand and his expression harried. He examined Hartley with brisk efficiency, then administered something from a small vial. "He'll live," the doctor pronounced. "Barely. The dose was smaller than—" He stopped himself. "Smaller than what, doctor?" Poirot asked softly. Pearson's face reddened. "Smaller than the dose that killed Marcus Blackwood. There, I've said it. I should have said it from the beginning, but the family asked for discretion, and I— You knew it was poison?" "I suspected. The symptoms were consistent with acute poisoning, rapid onset, cardiac distress, swift death. But without an autopsy, I couldn't be certain, and Mrs. Blackwood was most insistent that there be no autopsy. She said it would be undignified." "And you agreed?" I was weak. Pearson's voice was bitter. "Marcus was a friend. His widow seemed so composed, so certain it was his heart. I told myself I was imagining things, but now—" He looked at Hartley's unconscious form. "Now I know I was right. Someone is poisoning this household, and I will not remain silent a second time." Poirot nodded slowly. "Then you will make a statement to the police?" "I will, and I recommend, Monsieur Poirot, that you do the same. before anyone else dies. That evening, as we sat in the study reviewing the day's events, Poirot was unusually quiet. His tisane sat untouched before him, growing cold. "What troubles you?" I asked. "The killer grows bold, Hastings. A second poisoning in broad daylight with the household on alert." He shook his head. "Either they are desperate, or they believe themselves untouchable. Neither possibility comforts me." "But who?" "Vivian has the strongest motive now. The will practically accuses her of misconduct. And yet, she gains nothing from Hartley's death. If anything, she loses. For now, the police must be called, and questions must be asked that she would prefer to avoid." He tapped his fingers against the arm of his chair. "Non, Hastings. There is something here we do not yet see. A thread we have not yet grasped. The mysterious MC? Perhaps, or perhaps something closer to home." He rose, moving to the window to gaze out at the darkening grounds. "Tomorrow, Hastings, we must discover what Marcus Blackwood learned about his wife, and we must discover it before the killer strikes again." Lightning flickered on the horizon, brief and silent. The storm, it seemed, was not yet finished with Thornfield Hall. Chapter 5. The Hidden Ledger. The police arrived at Thornfield Hall shortly after 9 the following morning. Inspector Graves, a stocky man with a walrus moustache, and the weary expression of one who had seen too much of human nature to be surprised by any of it.
"It feels different now.
"Monsieur Poirot," he
Quiet,
said, shaking hands with evident relief.
but not empty.
"I'm glad you're here. When I closed this case as natural causes, I thought Miss Blackwood was simply overwrought. Now we have 2 poisonings and no clear culprit." He rubbed his forehead. "The chief constable is demanding answers I cannot provide." "Then perhaps, Inspector, we might pool our resources." Poirot gestured toward the study. "I have made certain discoveries that may prove illuminating." We settled in Blackwood's study, Poirot behind the desk, so the inspector
final
in a leather
link in the
armchair,
chain.
and myself
Hastings.
standing near the window where I could observe the grounds.
So
The
small.
rain had finally stopped, leaving the gardens washed
To cause
and
so
glistening
much
in pale
death.
morning light. "First," Poirot began, "the matter of the poison. Dr. Pearson has confirmed his suspicions. Mr. Blackwood was poisoned, as was Mr. Hartley. The same substance in both cases, he believes, though analysis will take time." "Do we know what substance?" "The doctor suspects a derivative of digitalis, foxglove extract. In small doses, it is medicinal. In larger doses..."
I owe you an
Poirot
apology,
spread his
Poirot.
hands.
I saw heart
"Fatal,
failure,
and
you saw
importantly, it mimics
murder.
the symptoms of heart failure almost perfectly." "Foxglove," Graves frowned. "That grows wild in the gardens here. Anyone could have access. Precisement, which means we cannot identify our killer by access to the poison. We must look elsewhere, to motive and to opportunity."
How does a
"The wife
friend
has
become
motive,"
a foe?
Graves said bluntly.
The
"This
greed.
codicil business,
It is a
the
slow
reduced
poison.
inheritance, the accusations of misconduct. She had every reason to want her husband dead before he could take further action against her. And yet she also had reason to want him
It
alive.
won't be the same
until
without
she
him.
understood her position more clearly." Poirot steepled his fingers. "There is also the matter of the second poisoning. Why would Madame Blackwood poison Mr. Hartley? He was no threat to her. Perhaps he knew something, saw something. Perhaps. But I think we must look deeper." Poirot withdrew the leather-bound ledger from the desk drawer. "This is Mr. Blackwood's private account book. In it, and I have found payments totaling £700 to someone identified only as MC.
I will never
The payments
forget what
began
you
3
did for
months
my
ago
father.
and continued until 1 month before his death." Graves leaned forward.
The truth, mademoiselle. It is
Or
the
an
only
investigator.
legacy that lasts.
Someone Blackwood hired to look into his wife's past. Poirot opened the ledger to a marked page. The final payment, here, is noted with an additional notation. Final report received. This was dated 3 weeks ago, the same day Blackwood visited his solicitor to change his will. So this MC gave Blackwood information that prompted him to change his will and add the codicil. Graves nodded slowly. "If we find MC, we find out what Blackwood knew." "My thoughts exactly. I have made inquiries through certain channels. There is a private inquiry agent in London, one Michael Crane, whose initials match and whose reputation suggests he would accept such a commission. Poirot produced a telegram from his pocket. I received confirmation this morning. Mr. Crane did indeed conduct an investigation on behalf of Marcus Blackwood. He is prepared to share his findings, for a consideration. How much of a consideration? £50, a reasonable sum given the circumstances. Graves sighed heavily. The department will never authorize... I have already paid it, Inspector, from my own funds. Mr. Crane's report should arrive by the afternoon post. The morning passed slowly. Inspector Graves conducted formal interviews with each member of the household, covering much of the same ground Poirot and I had already explored. I observed from the corner, on noting the subtle differences in how people responded to official police questioning versus Poirot's gentler approach. Vivian Blackwood was icily composed, admitting nothing beyond what she had already told us. Gerald Hartley, still weak from his ordeal, recounted the poisoning with evident confusion. He had simply poured himself a drink from the library decanter, as he had done countless times before. Anyone could have tampered with it, he said, his voice hoarse. The library is never locked. I often have a whiskey there after dinner. Everyone knew my habits. Had you made any enemies recently, Mr. Hartley? Graves asked. Hartley laughed bitterly. In business, one always makes enemies, but none who would resort to murder, I should think. He hesitated. Though there is one thing. Yes? The day before Marcus died, and I received a strange telephone call. A man's voice, muffled as though speaking through cloth. He said, "The partnership ends soon. Be prepared." I thought it was a crank, someone playing a prank. Now I wonder. Did you recognize the voice? No, it was too distorted. But the words, they seem prophetic now, don't they? The afternoon post arrived at 2:30, carried in by Mrs. Finch on a silver tray. Among the usual correspondence was a thick manila envelope addressed to Poirot, marked Private and Confidential. Poirot opened it with careful precision, withdrawing several typewritten pages. His eyes scanned the contents rapidly, his expression shifting from interest to surprise to something I could only describe as satisfaction. "Hastings," he murmured. "Come and read this." I moved to his side and looked over his shoulder. On the letterhead read, Crane Investigations, Discreet Inquiries for Discerning Clients. Dear Monsieur Poirot, the letter began. As per your request, I am forwarding the complete findings of my investigation into Mrs. Vivian Blackwood, née Vivian Hartley, conducted on behalf of the late Mr. Marcus Blackwood. I stopped reading, my eyes fixed on a single word. Hastings? Continue, mon ami. It becomes more interesting still. Mrs. Blackwood's maiden name is indeed Hartley. She is the younger sister of Mr. Gerald Hartley, Mr. Blackwood's business partner. This relationship was deliberately concealed at the time of her marriage to Mr. Blackwood, with both siblings agreeing to maintain the deception. Good God, I breathed. They're siblings, Vivian and Gerald? So it would appear. Read on. Prior to her marriage, Mrs. Blackwood was involved in a romantic liaison with a Mr. Thomas Whitmore, a married solicitor in Manchester. When Mr. Whitmore attempted to end the affair, Mrs. Blackwood threatened to expose him publicly. Mr. Whitmore paid her a substantial sum, reportedly £5,000, to secure her silence and departure from the city. Following this incident, Mrs. Blackwood relocated to London, where her brother introduced her to Mr. Marcus Blackwood at a dinner party. The courtship was swift, the marriage arranged within 6 months. I have obtained testimony from a former maid in the Hartley household who overheard a conversation between the siblings shortly before the wedding. According to this witness, Mrs. Blackwood said, "Once I'm his wife, we'll have access to everything. The business will be ours within 5 years." It is my professional opinion that the marriage between Mrs. Blackwood and Mr. Blackwood was contracted with the deliberate intention of gaining control of Blackwood and Hartley imports, either through inheritance or through influence over Mr. Blackwood's business decisions. I conveyed these findings to Mr. Blackwood on September 14th. He was deeply distressed, but thanked me for my thoroughness. He indicated that he intended to take legal action, but wished to gather additional evidence before confronting his wife and partner. That, Monsieur Poirot, is the full extent of my investigation. I trust it proves useful in your inquiries. Yours faithfully, Michael Crane. I set down the letter, my mind reeling. So, Vivian and Gerald were working together from the beginning, and the marriage was a fraud, a scheme to take control of the business. We, Hastings, a conspiracy of siblings hidden behind a facade of respectability. Poirot's eyes gleamed. But consider, if both Hartleys sought to gain the business, why would one poison the other? Perhaps the partnership soured. Perhaps Gerald became greedy, or Vivian felt she wasn't receiving her fair share. Perhaps, but there is another possibility. Poirot rose, pacing before the fireplace. What if the second poisoning was not intended for Mr. Hartley at all? What if someone else was the true target? Who else drinks whiskey in the library? That, mon ami, is precisely the question we must answer. I found Mrs. Finch in the kitchen, supervising the preparation of dinner. She looked up as I entered, her expression wary. Captain Hastings. Can I help you? I hope so, Mrs. Finch. A small question. Who in the household typically uses the library in the evenings? She considered. Mr. Hartley, when he visits. He likes a whiskey after dinner. Mr. Davies sometimes reads there. He's fond of the history section. And... She hesitated. Yes? Mr. Blackwood used to, before he died. He and Mr. Hartley would often take their drinks in there together, discussing business. Her voice softened. It was their tradition. 20 years of friendship ended in that room. Anyone else? The ladies of the house? Miss Eleanor prefers the morning room, and Mrs. Blackwood... Mrs. Finch's expression hardened. She never set foot in the library, said the books made her sneeze. I returned to Poirot with this information. He listened intently, his fingers drumming against the armrest of his chair. So the whiskey in the library would be drunk by Hartley, by Davies, or, before his death, by Blackwood himself. His eyes narrowed. Hastings, we have been assuming that the two poisonings were connected. But what if they were not the same crime at all? What if the library decanter was poisoned before Blackwood died, intended for him, and Hartley simply had the misfortune to drink from it first, after the murder was complete? But Blackwood died in the dining room, from the brandy. Précisément, he died before he could visit the library that evening. The killer had prepared two methods.
What will happen to Thornfield Hall now?
And only one was needed. Poirot stood abruptly. Hastings, we must examine the library decanter immediately, and we must discover when it was last filled. The library was empty when we arrived. On the afternoon light slanting through tall windows onto shelves laden with leather-bound volumes. The whiskey decanter sat on a small table near the fireplace, its crystal surface catching the light. Poirot approached it carefully, bending to examine the stopper,
In nature,
the rim,
as in
the
life,
liquid within. His
there
nostrils
is a
flared as he
hidden order.
inhaled. The same bitter undertone, faint enough. The poison disperses over time, but unmistakable. He straightened. This decanter was poisoned before the dinner at which Blackwood died. Someone wanted to ensure he would not survive the evening, one way or another. But who had access? Everyone in the household. The library is never locked, as Mr. Hartley observed. Poirot moved to the window.
We will make
gazing
it
out at the
honest again,
grounds.
Mr. Davies.
But consider, Hastings, the killer poisoned two separate vessels. The brandy decanter in the dining room and the whiskey decanter in the library. This requires knowledge of Blackwood's habits, access to both locations, and sufficient poison for both attempts. Vivian had access, so did Gerald, so did Davies. We. But only one of them had a reason to prepare two methods. He turned, his eyes bright with sudden understanding. Unless Hastings, there were two killers working in concert, each preparing their own trap, each unaware of the other's plan. Two killers? It would explain the redundancy, the double cross, as it were. His voice dropped, and it would explain why one of them nearly died from the other's poison. The implication struck me like a physical blow. You're saying Vivian poisoned the brandy and Gerald poisoned the whiskey? They were both trying to kill Blackwood, but neither knew about the other's plan? It is a theory, Hastings. Only a theory. But it fits the facts. Poirot's expression grew grave. And if I am correct, then one of our killers has already attempted to eliminate the other. The question is, which one struck first, and which one will strike again?
The criminal
Chapter 6.
The criminal mind,
Gathering
Hastings. It is a
The evening
fascinating
descended upon
study.
Thornfield Hall with an oppressive stillness. The storm clouds that had threatened all day now hung low and heavy, pressing down upon the estate like a hand poised to strike. I found myself pacing the drawing room, unable to settle, while Poirot sat motionless in his chair, his eyes half closed in concentration. "You have a plan," I said. It was not a question. "I have a theory, Hastings, a theory that requires confirmation." He opened his eyes. "Tonight, I shall set a trap, and our killer, or killers, will reveal themselves." "How?" "By appealing to the one motivation that supersedes all others in this household."
The method,
A faint
Hastings.
smile crossed his lips.
That's back the
Greed and fear.
It begins
the two great
with the
engines of
morning
human
egg.
action. He rose and crossed to the bell pull. When Mrs. Finch appeared, he addressed her with quiet authority. "Madame Finch, I require your assistance. Please inform all members of the household that I wish to speak with them in the drawing room at 9 o'clock this evening. I have information regarding Mr. Blackwood's death that I believe they will find illuminating." Mrs. Finch's eyes widened. "All of them, sir. All of them. Mrs. Blackwood, Mr. Hartley, Mr. Davies, Miss Eleanor, and yourself, if you would be so kind. Your testimony may prove essential." "Very good, sir." She hesitated at the door. "Well, qui, Monsieur Poirot? Do you know who did it? Who killed Mr. Blackwood?" "I have my suspicions, Madame Finch. Tonight we shall discover if they are correct." The hours until 9 passed with agonizing slowness. Poirot spent much of the time in whispered conversation with Inspector Graves, who had agreed to remain at the hall and position 2 constables outside the drawing-room doors. I was not privy to the details of their discussion, but I observed Graves's expression shifting from skepticism to interest to something approaching admiration. "Remarkable," I heard him murmur as they concluded. "Absolutely remarkable. If you're right—" "I am seldom wrong, Inspector. The little grey cells, they do not deceive." At 8:30, Poirot withdrew to his room to change for the evening. When he emerged, his appearance was immaculate. His suit freshly pressed, his mustache waxed to gleaming perfection, his patent leather shoes polished to a mirror shine. He looked, I thought, like a man preparing for battle. "Come, Hastings," he said. "The stage is set. It is time for the final act." The drawing room had been arranged with care. Chairs were positioned in a loose semicircle before the fireplace where Poirot would stand. The curtains were drawn against the darkness outside, and the fire had been built up to a crackling blaze that cast dancing shadows across the walls. They arrived one by one, their faces reflecting varying degrees of anxiety and anticipation. Eleanor came first, pale but composed, taking a seat near the window. She had changed into a simple grey dress that made her look older than her years, more careworn. Aunt Gerald Hartley followed, still moving with the careful deliberation of a man recovering from illness. His face was drawn, his eyes watchful. He lowered himself into a chair near the door, as though preparing for a quick escape. Vivian Blackwood swept in like a queen entering her court, her black dress immaculate, her golden hair perfectly arranged. But I noticed the tightness around her eyes, the almost imperceptible tremor in her hands as she settled onto the settee. Davies entered last, quiet and unobtrusive as always, taking a position standing near the bookcase. His spectacles caught the firelight, obscuring his eyes. Mrs. Finch hovered near the door, uncertain of her place. Poirot gestured her to a chair with a gentle smile. "Please, Madame Finch, you have earned your place in this gathering." Inspector Graves stood in the corner, so notebook ready, his 2 constables visible through the half-open doors. Poirot surveyed the assembled company with an expression of grave satisfaction. Then he began. "Mesdames et messieurs, we are gathered here to unveil a truth that has lain hidden beneath layers of deception and carefully constructed lies. The death of Marcus Blackwood was not, as was first supposed, a natural occurrence. It was murder, calculated, premeditated, and executed with cold precision." No one spoke. The fire crackled. Outside, distant thunder rumbled. When I first examined this case, I was struck by its complexity. Too many suspects, too many motives, too many opportunities. Poirot clasped his hands behind his back. The jealous wife, the aggrieved business partner, the overlooked secretary, or even the faithful housekeeper had reason to wish her employer's continued existence, if not his death. He paused, letting the silence stretch. But gradually, the little grey cells began to perceive a pattern. Not a simple pattern, oh no, but a web of interlocking deceits, each strand carefully placed to obscure the truth. "Get on with it," Vivian said sharply. "If you know who killed my husband, say so." "Patience, madame. The truth, it must be approached with care." Poirot turned to face her directly. "Let us begin with you, Vivian Blackwood, or should I say, Vivian Hartley." The room went utterly still. Vivian's face drained of color. "Yes, I know your secret. You are not merely the wife of Marcus Blackwood. You are the sister of his business partner, Gerald Hartley. A relationship you both concealed from your husband, from this household, from the world." Gerald half rose from his chair. "Now see here. Sit down, Monsieur Hartley. Your protestations will avail you nothing." Poirot's voice cracked like a whip. "I have documentary evidence, a report from the private investigator your brother-in-law hired to uncover the truth. Your conspiracy is laid bare." Vivian's composure cracked. We didn't. The marriage was a fraud, a scheme devised by siblings to gain control of Blackwood and Hartley Imports. You would marry the wealthy partner, gain influence over his affairs, and eventually, through inheritance or manipulation, deliver the company into your brother's hands. Poirot's eyes were cold. "A clever plan, but Marcus Blackwood was cleverer than you supposed." "He discovered the truth," Eleanor said softly. "The letter." "The changed will." "Précisément. 3 months ago, troubled by his wife's behavior, Blackwood hired a private investigator. The findings were damning. He learned of the concealed relationship, the prior scandal with Thomas Whitmore, the conversation overheard by a servant. "Once I'm his wife, we'll have access to everything." Poirot shook his head slowly. Armed with this knowledge, Blackwood changed his will. He reduced his wife's inheritance to a fraction of what she expected. He added a codicil that would disinherit her entirely if evidence of misconduct emerged, and he gave his shares in the business not to his partner, but outright, ensuring that Gerald Hartley could not easily sell or dissolve the company. "You're saying we're both guilty?" Gerald's voice was hoarse. "That we conspired to murder Marcus?" "I am saying that you both had motive, that you both had opportunity, and that someone in this room poisoned Marcus Blackwood with digitalis extracted from the foxgloves that grow in abundance in the gardens of this estate." Poirot moved slowly around the semicircle, his gaze touching each face in turn. "But here is where the case becomes truly interesting. For you see, there were not one but 2 poisoned vessels in this house, the brandy decanter in the dining room from which Blackwood drank on the night of his death, and the whiskey decanter in the library from which Mr. Hartley drank 2 days later." "2 decanters?" Eleanor frowned. "But why?" "That is the question that puzzled me greatly. Why prepare 2 methods? Why risk detection by introducing poison into 2 separate locations?" Poirot stopped before the fireplace, turning to face them all. The answer, when it came to me, was startling in its simplicity. There were 2 poisoners, each working independently, each unaware of the other's plan. A gasp rippled through the room. Consider the facts. Vivian Blackwood had access to the brandy decanter. She was observed near the sideboard before dinner on the night of her husband's death. She knew his habits, knew he would take a brandy after the meal. She had motive, the will, the codicil, the threat of exposure and disinheritance. "This is outrageous!" Vivian rose, her voice shrill. "I did nothing." "And Gerald Hartley," Poirot continued, ignoring her outburst, "had access to the whiskey decanter in the library. When he knew Blackwood's evening routine, the habit of a whiskey before bed, a tradition of 20 years. He too had motive, the business arrangement, the threat of the partnership dissolving, the discovery that his carefully laid plan had been exposed." Gerald's
The
face
killer
had gone
builds a
grey.
web,
"You're saying I poisoned Marcus,
but they are also
my
trapped
friend of
by
20
it.
years? I am saying that someone poisoned the whiskey decanter, and that you, Monsieur Hartley, nearly died from drinking it yourself." Poirot
I don't
tilted
see
his
the
head.
pattern, Poirot.
"A curious fate for a poisoner, no?
Order
To fall
and
victim
method,
to his own
Hastings.
Unless,"
Order
I said
and
slowly,
method.
understanding dawning, Unless he didn't poison the whiskey at all, unless someone else did, meaning to kill him. Exactement, Hastings. Poirot's eyes gleamed.
Yes,
You begin to
Mrs.
see
Blackwood.
the double cross, for that is
A most
precisely what occurred in this
unusual
house.
request.
A betrayal within a betrayal. A killer turned victim. The fire crackled. Thunder rolled closer. The brandy killed Marcus Blackwood. The whiskey was meant to kill Gerald Hartley. Poirot's voice dropped. 2 murders planned by the same hand, 2 siblings bound together in conspiracy until one decided that the partnership had outlived its usefulness. All eyes turned to Vivian.
The window was locked.
No, she whispered.
Precisely.
No, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, madame. With your husband dead, the will would be read. You would discover that your inheritance was far less than you anticipated. Worse, the codicil threatened to strip even that away if your misconduct was revealed. Your brother, meanwhile, would receive the business outright. He would have everything. You would have nothing. Poirot's voice hardened. Unless, of course, Gerald also died. No, then the business would be sold, the proceeds divided among the remaining heirs. You would receive your share. A smaller fortune than you had hoped for, perhaps, but better than complete exposure and ruin. She tried to kill me. Gerald stared at his sister, his face a mask of horror. My own sister tried to kill me. After you conspired together to murder her husband. Poirot nodded. Yes,
Everyone
Monsieur
has their own
there is
time.
guilt enough for both of you.
But the truth has
the
only
brandy
one.
that killed Blackwood, that was your doing. The whiskey that nearly killed you, that was hers. You have no proof, Vivian said, but her voice was cracking. This is all speculation. Is it? Poirot withdrew a small envelope from his pocket. This afternoon, while you were being interviewed by Inspector Graves, I took the liberty of examining your room, madam. With the inspector's permission, of course. I found this, hidden beneath a loose floorboard in your closet. He opened the envelope and withdrew a folded paper. A receipt from a chemist in London, dated 1 week before your husband.
I still don't see how she expected to get away with it.
Digitalis. His eyes met hers. Would you care to explain? Chapter 7. The double cross revealed the silence that followed Poirot's revelation was absolute.
The signs were
Blackwood
there.
stood frozen, her face a pale
I just
mask,
didn't want to see
her
them.
eyes fixed upon the damning receipt in Poirot's hand. Gerald Hartley had slumped back in his chair, his expression shifting between horror and dawning comprehension. You have nothing to say, madame? Poirot inquired softly.
The lover
Vivian's lips parted,
from the
but no sound
past.
emerged. She swayed slightly, and for a moment I thought she might faint. Then, with visible effort, she collected herself. The receipt proves nothing, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Digitalis is used for heart conditions. I might have purchased it for any number of reasons. Indeed. Then perhaps you would care to explain why you concealed it beneath your floorboards rather than in your medicine cabinet? Poirot shook his head slowly. Non, madame. The concealment speaks to guilt, as does the timing, 1 week before your husband's death, as does the quantity, far more than any legitimate medical need would require. I never meant... Vivian's composure shattered completely. Tears streamed down her face, though whether from grief or fear, I could not determine. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Then tell us how it was supposed to happen. Poirot's voice was gentle now, almost kind. The truth, madame. It is your only refuge now. Vivian sank onto the settee, her elegant posture crumbling. She pressed her hands to her face, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. When she finally spoke, her voice was raw, stripped of all pretense. Gerald came to me 6 months ago. He said the business was failing, that Marcus refused to sell, refused to adapt. He said we would lose everything if something didn't change. She drew a shuddering breath. He proposed a solution. If Marcus died, Gerald would inherit the business. He would sell it immediately, and we would split the proceeds. I would receive my widow's portion, and Gerald would give me half of his share. We would both be wealthy. We would both be free. And you agreed to this plan? I was desperate. The words burst from her like a dam breaking. Marcus had changed. He was cold, distant. When he watched me constantly, as though he suspected something. I didn't know about the investigator then. I didn't know he had discovered the truth about Gerald and me, but I sensed that something was wrong. I thought if I didn't act soon, I would lose everything. So you conspired with your brother to murder your husband. Gerald said he would handle everything. He said he knew how to obtain the poison, how to administer it without detection. I was to do nothing, only wait and grieve convincingly and collect my inheritance. Vivian's laugh was bitter, hollow. I was a fool to trust him. What happened? The will? She spat the word like a curse. That damned will! Gerald told me we had nothing to worry about, that Marcus had made no changes, that everything would proceed as we had planned. But then the solicitor came, and I discovered the truth. Marcus had disinherited me. He had given Gerald the business outright. And that codicil... Her voice cracked. If the truth about our relationship emerged, I would receive nothing. Nothing at all. And you realized that your brother had betrayed you. He knew. Vivian's eyes blazed with sudden fury. He must have known about the new will. Marcus trusted him. They were partners, friends. Gerald would have known, and he said nothing. He let me believe I would be wealthy, let me participate in this horrible scheme, knowing all along that I would be left with nothing while he took everything. So you decided to take revenge. I decided to protect myself. She straightened slightly, a ghost of her former dignity returning. If Gerald died before the estate was settled, his share would pass to his next of kin. And since he never married, never had children, she smiled grimly. I am his next of kin, his only living relative. Everything would come to me. The whiskey in the library. Gerald always took a whiskey in the library after dinner. It was his ritual, his comfort. I knew his habits as well as he knew Marcus's. Her voice hardened. I obtained more digitalis. It was easy enough once I knew where to look. The foxgloves in the garden. I prepared a concentrated extract and added it to the decanter 2 days after Marcus's funeral. I thought it would look like the same killer striking again, that no one would suspect a second murder by a different hand. But Mr. Hartley survived. The dose was smaller than I intended. I was afraid of being too obvious, of the poison being detected. She laughed bitterly. Ironic, isn't it? My caution saved his miserable life. Gerald Hartley had listened to this confession with growing horror. Now he rose, his face contorted with rage. You tried to kill me, your own brother, after everything I did for you. Everything you did for me? Vivian whirled on him. You used me. You dangled wealth and security in front of me like a carrot, and all the while you knew that Marcus had changed his will. You let me commit murder believing I would share in the fortune when you intended to take everything for yourself. I didn't know about the will, Gerald shouted. Marcus never told me. He changed it in secret with that damn solicitor of his. I was as shocked as you when Pemberton read the terms. Liar! You were his partner, his confidant. You knew everything about his affairs. I knew nothing. He shut me out months ago. Stopped sharing information, stopped trusting me. I thought it was because of the business disputes, the arguments about selling. I never imagined... He stopped, his voice breaking. I never imagined he had discovered the truth about us. Poirot raised his hand, commanding silence. Both siblings turned to him, their faces flushed with accusation and counter-accusation. This is all most illuminating, Poirot said calmly. But I fear, Monsieur Hartley, that you have not yet made your own confession. Madame Blackwood has admitted to the second poisoning, the whiskey in the library. But the first poisoning, the brandy that killed Marcus Blackwood, that was your doing, was it not? Gerald's face went grey. I don't... Come now, monsieur. Your sister has laid bare her guilt. Will you not do the same? Poirot's voice hardened. Or shall I present the evidence myself? What evidence? Gerald's voice was barely audible. The brandy decanter, Monsieur Hartley. When I examined it on the morning after our arrival, I detected the faint odor of digitalis, the same substance that killed your partner and nearly killed you. But I also noticed something else. A fingerprint, partially preserved on the crystal stopper. A print that did not match the butler, nor Mrs. Finch, nor any other member of the household staff. Gerald swallowed hard. I had Inspector Graves obtain your fingerprints this morning under the pretense of eliminating you as a suspect. The print on the stopper matches yours precisely." Poirot shook his head slowly. "You poisoned the brandy, Monsieur Hartley. You knew your partner's habits, knew he would take a brandy after dinner. You added the digitalis when the household was distracted, confident that no one would suspect the victim's oldest friend." "It was supposed to be painless," Gerald whispered. "The doctor said he wouldn't suffer, that it would be quick, like his heart simply stopping. I never wanted him to suffer. And yet suffer he did, and die, at your hand." Gerald collapsed back into his chair, his face buried in his hands. His shoulders shook with silent sobs, or perhaps silent laughter. In that moment, I could not tell the difference. 20 years, he said finally, his voice muffled. 20 years of building that company together. And in the end, he was going to destroy everything. The offer from Harrison and Associates, it would have made us both wealthy beyond imagining. But Marcus refused. He said the Blackwood name meant more to him than money. He would rather watch the company crumble than see it absorbed by strangers. So you decided to remove the obstacle. I decided to save what we had built. Gerald raised his head, his eyes red-rimmed but defiant. The business was dying. Another year, perhaps 2, and there would be nothing left. No legacy, no fortune, nothing. The
circle is closing,
and
Poirot.
Marcus stood in the way. You might have dissolved the partnership legally and walked away with nothing. The company's debts would have consumed everything. Only the sale could save us. He laughed bitterly. And Vivian, my dear treacherous sister, she was supposed to inherit as his widow. With her shares and mine combined, we would have had complete control. We could have accepted Harrison's offer immediately before the
time for lies has ended.
But the will changed everything. The damned will! Gerald's voice was savage.
The missing
Marcus
10
gave
minutes.
me the business outright, but loaded with conditions. I can't sell for 5 years, I can't dissolve the partnership, I'm trapped with a failing company and no way out. He glared at Vivian. And then my beloved sister tried to murder me, to steal what little I had left. "You stole it first," Vivian screamed. "You promised me half. You swore we would share everything." "Enough." Poirot's voice cut through their accusations like a blade.
Yeah.
The recriminations, they are pointless now. The truth has been revealed. 2 poisoners, 2 betrayals, a double cross within a double cross. He turned to Inspector Graves, Potty, who had been watching the proceedings with an expression of grim satisfaction. "Inspector, I believe you have heard sufficient confessions to make your arrests." Graves nodded, gesturing to his constables. "Gerald Hartley, Vivian Blackwood, I'm arresting you both for the murder of Marcus Blackwood. You are not obliged to say anything, but anything you do say may be taken down and used in evidence against you." The constables moved forward. Gerald submitted quietly, his resistance seemingly exhausted. But Vivian pulled away, her eyes wild. "Wait, please, there must be something." She turned to Poirot, desperation in her voice. "I'll tell you everything, every detail of Gerald's plan. I'll testify against him. Surely that must count for something." "That, madame, is for the courts to decide." Poirot's voice was cold. "You participated willingly in the murder of your husband.
Mon ami.
You attempted to murder your own brother. The law will determine your fate." "But I was deceived. Gerald manipulated me, used me. As you used your husband. As you used everyone who trusted you." Poirot shook his head slowly. "The web of deception, madame, has caught its weaver. There is no escape now." The constables led them away. Gerald silent and broken, Vivian still protesting her innocence with diminishing conviction. The drawing-room doors closed behind them, and a heavy silence fell over those who remained. Eleanor Blackwood stood by the window, her face pale but composed. She had witnessed her stepmother's confession, her father's partner's admission of guilt, without a word. Now she turned to Poirot, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You knew," she said quietly. "From the beginning, you suspected them both." "I suspected that the truth was more complex than it appeared, mademoiselle. The title of this tragedy, The Double Cross, it suggested betrayal upon betrayal. When I discovered that Madame Blackwood and Monsieur Hartley were siblings, I understood that the conspiracy was deeper than a simple murder for profit. Poirot sighed, but I confess I did not anticipate that they would turn upon each other so quickly. The greed, the desperation, it consumed them both. My father knew. Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. He discovered the truth about Vivian, about Gerald. That's why he changed his will. Your father was a clever man. He saw through the deception, hired an investigator, gathered evidence, but he hesitated to act, perhaps hoping he was wrong, perhaps unwilling to believe that those he trusted had betrayed him so completely. Poirot's expression softened. That hesitation cost him his life. If only he had told someone. If only he had gone to the police. The "if only," mademoiselle? It is the saddest phrase in any language. We cannot change the past. We can only ensure that justice is served in the present. Eleanor nodded slowly. She crossed to where Davies stood by the bookcase, his mild face drawn with grief. "Mr. Davies," she said gently, "you knew my father better than anyone. Did you suspect—" Davies removed his spectacles, polishing them with trembling hands, that nervous habit I had observed before. "I suspected something was wrong," he admitted. Mr. Blackwood had been different these past months, distracted, worried. I asked him once if I could help, and he said, his voice caught. He said, "Davies, the worst betrayals come from those we trust most." I didn't understand what he meant. Now I do. "You served him faithfully for 15 years, Eleanor said. "He valued you more than you know. The will, the provisions he made for you." "Provisions?" Davies looked confused. "My father left you £10,000, Eleanor said, "and a letter of recommendation that would open doors at any firm in London. I saw the documents this morning." She smiled sadly. "He wanted to ensure your future, even if he wasn't there to see it." Davies stared at her, overwhelmed. Then, very quietly, he began to weep. Mrs. Finch brought tea, strong, hot, restorative. We sat in the drawing room as the storm finally broke outside, rain lashing the windows, thunder rolling across the Surrey hills. "So, what will happen to them?" Eleanor asked. "Vivian and Gerald?" "They will stand trial," Poirot replied. "The evidence is overwhelming. Confessions have been made. Justice will be served." He paused. "Whether that justice includes the ultimate penalty, I cannot say. That is for the courts to determine." "And the business? Blackwood and Hartley Imports?" "With Mr. Hartley convicted of murder, his shares will be forfeit. The company will pass entirely to you, mademoiselle, as your father's sole heir. You may do with it as you wish. Sell it, rebuild it, dissolve it." Poirot smiled gently. "Your father's legacy is in your hands now." Eleanor was silent for a long moment. Then she straightened, a new determination in her eyes. "I won't sell. Not to Harrison and Associates, not to anyone. My father believed in this company. He died protecting it from those who would destroy it." She lifted her chin. "I'll find new partners, honest ones. I'll rebuild what my father built. I'll make the Blackwood name mean something again. A noble ambition, mademoiselle. Your father would be proud." The storm had passed by the time Poirot and I took our leave of Thornfield Hall. The evening sky was washed clean, the stars emerging one by one through the retreating clouds. Eleanor accompanied us to the door, her hand warm in Poirot's as she thanked him. "You gave me justice," she said. "You gave me truth. I can never repay that. Justice is its own reward, mademoiselle. The truth, once revealed, sets all things right." Poirot bowed slightly. "I wish you every success in your endeavors. And should you ever require the services of Hercule Poirot again, though I hope you shall not, you know where to find me." The motor car that would carry us to the station waited in the drive. I helped Poirot with his coat, though he hardly needed the assistance, and we settled into the back seat as the driver navigated the winding country roads. "A satisfying conclusion," I offered. "Satisfying, yes." Poirot gazed out the window at the darkened countryside. "But also tragic, Hastings. 2 people, bound by blood, destroyed by greed, a marriage founded on deception, a partnership of 20 years, ended in betrayal and murder." He shook his head slowly. The human heart, it is capable of such darkness. And yet also light, I countered. Eleanor, she came through this with her integrity intact. She will rebuild, and she will honor her father's memory. Oui, there is that. Poirot's expression softened. The young, they have resilience. They can emerge from tragedy transformed, strengthened. It is the gift of hope that age takes from us. You're not so old, Poirot. He smiled, his moustache twitching with amusement. You are kind, Hastings, but the little grey cells, they have seen much. Too much, perhaps. He sighed. Still, there is satisfaction in justice, in truth revealed, in wickedness exposed. This is why Hercule Poirot does what he does. The train station appeared ahead, its lights warm and welcoming against the night. As we stepped onto the platform, the London Express already waiting, I found myself reflecting on the case, on the web of lies and betrayals we had unraveled, on the terrible price of deception. "Sure, Poirot," I said as we boarded the train, "do you think they loved each other? Vivian and Gerald? Before the greed consumed them?" Poirot considered the question as we found our compartment. "I think, Hastings, that they loved themselves. Each other they used, as tools, as means to an end. It is not the same as love." He settled into his seat with a small sigh. "True love, it does not destroy. It does not betray. It does not murder." And Marcus Blackwood? Did anyone truly love him? His daughter? Poirot's voice was soft. Eleanor loved him, purely honestly, without condition. And in the end, Hastings, that is what saved her. That is what will carry her forward. He closed his eyes, his face peaceful. The heart that loves truly cannot be corrupted. This is the great truth that the wicked never understand. The train began to move, carrying us back toward London, toward the next mystery, the next puzzle for the little grey cells to unravel. But for now, in the quiet of the compartment, there was only the rhythm of the wheels on the tracks, the gentle sway of the carriage, and the knowledge that justice, however imperfect, however hard won, had been served. "There is no greater crime than to kill for silence," Poirot murmured, half to himself, "and no greater punishment than to be betrayed by the one you trusted most." I nodded, though he could not see me. Outside the window, the lights of London began to appear on the horizon, beacons in the darkness, guiding us home. The end.